Wasawi. Qanakhoi shtuqa khatati. Ya hayu qatangi shtu iltu. Qanaya akhsai. Ilchi shakhiti sa akhi. Akhtawasaku adati qagahtla ati. Wuchin. Ate awa ya hayu qatangi. Hayu qatangi awa. Isa akhi. Ate isa akhi ya awa akhtawasaku. Ya atlein atewe qudzati. Qanakhawe atlein qaku hastiqit katishhid. Yewa akhtawasaku yakhsaqai gunchish tlein. Qechne qahani quh. Akatkhatsewa kakdeside ade khitnu forest wit qoa. Frederica de Laguna. Neish Story. Weha, Jeff Lear, gunchish. So, we're going to talk today. My name is René. I'm so grateful that you are studying the Tlingit language. I think we should talk a little bit about the resources that are out there that you can listen to. You got to really tune your ears up, and then that helps with your speaking. Tlingit is one of the most well-documented languages in the world in terms of endangered languages, and that is thanks to the work of Frederica de Laguna, Constance Nash and Gillian Story, Nora Marks Dowenhauer, Rosita Whirl, Forrest DeWitt, Johnny Marks, and many others. There's lots of families who have tapes. There's lots of people who have recorded Tlingit. There is video. There is tons and tons of stuff that's out there. And so what I want to talk about is methods that you can use as a learner to improve your listening skills. And as you improve your listening skills, you will be improving your speaking skills. So I guess a couple of things is, where do you find this stuff? There are folders. There's Google folders that you can check out. There's YouTube channels that you could check out. There are video recordings. There are audio recordings. There are things that you can access through the internet. There are things that you can download and take with you. And so I want to talk about how to make the most of this material. For me, if you're fairly new to learning Tlingit, my recommendation is to stick with things that are already translated. But not all the time, and so that's kind of your main go-to, though, because there's quite a few stories like Tauk and Duktut that are published in a wonderful collection called Hashuka. And in Hashuka, you have a number of different narratives that have been translated and, transcribed and translated. So when we say transcribed, that means the Tlingit has been written down. And then translated means it's been written down in English. And every translator has different approaches to how they translate, what their intentions are, who their audience is, and what their methods are in terms of word order, things that have previously been referenced that are currently not being specifically talked about. And so these are some things that I think you should consider. And so for things, starting with things that are already transcribed and translated, I think is a great way to go about it, because you can read along with it. And then you can read the translation, and then you already know that translation, so you could walk around and just listen to these recordings over and over. And your brain and your subconscious and your spirit will do a lot of work to figure out how you get from the Tlingit side to the English side. The other thing that it allows you to do is to live with this world where folks were learning how to do this stuff. Some of the first stories ever written down fully in Tlingit were recorded by Yesh Nawu, Tom Peters, and Teslin, and were worked on by Qechne, Nora Marks Dowenhauer, and Huayinaq, Richard Dowenhauer. And this led to work within the Sealaska Heritage Institute to develop some bilingual literature. And through this bilingual literature, now we can study the language rather in depth. So you have this set of stories that you have the translations to. So beyond that, though, maybe you have a relative or someone from your community who's been recorded, and you want to listen to them to increase your knowledge of either your family or your region, maybe your dialect, as you sort of think about how the language works. And so one of the things I think you want to do is to figure out when you're listening with intention and figure out when you're listening to just create a background of living within the Tlingit language. So if you're listening with intention, that means you're an active listener, you're focused, you're not trying to do a bunch of other things, but you are listening to the recording and trying to make sure that you're understanding what's being said and that you're trying to reenact as if someone were sitting there talking to you in the language, because not all of us have someone to talk to right now. The second way is sort of in the background. So maybe you're going to go clean the house, or maybe you're going to do something that's a little bit more mechanical and doesn't require your brain to actively be involved in the process. So you might have the language on, or while you're driving, while you're sleeping, while you're resting. That way the language is just always around you. And this helps your mind, body, and spirit to be with the language on a regular basis. And this helps to normalize the language, which means once you hear it, or if you're requested to speak something in the language, it doesn't take this monumental shift, like, oh, I got to switch over from English to Tlingit, but instead, you're just always around the language and you're always ready. You don't have to switch into the language because you're becoming a true multilingual. So one of the things that I think you can do if you're advanced is you can start engaging with stuff that maybe hasn't been translated yet. And you could start to think about what kinds of things am I recognizing? Can I retell this in English? There are certain points that I'm really not getting. And then that might lead you to transcription and translation yourself. So for this, there's a program called Elan. If you go to an internet search engine and type in ELAN space software, that should lead you to a place where you could download it. And then what you need is access to sometimes the audio and sometimes the video. So you need to have the media that you're working with, and then have your Elan file in the same folder. And Elan is, it takes a while to learn how to use it, but once you get it, it's a very powerful tool for being able to select areas of a recording, to then create a text box for it, and then put in there in Tlingit, and then put underneath that the translation. I think most of the folks who have become high fluency second language learners have done some level of transcription and translation. And there's some stuff that's a little bit more at the beginning phases. So there was a series of videos that came out in the late 60s, early 1970s called Let's Learn Tlingit, where they had these puppet videos, and I believe they did a script, and then they translated that script into Tlingit, Hatkil, and Semalgach. So you have it in Tlingit, Haida, and Tsimshian languages. And so you could take those, and they are short, and they are designed for children, but Tlingit is a complex language, so even language for children is very complicated for newer learners. But you can start with something like that to say, okay, I can see what they're doing. I can see they're talking about a flower or a window. And so you've got this place to work from. Where sometimes if you're dealing with a conversation or a story, you just have, you've got to just engage with the speaker and not have so many visual cues. So that brings me to the intention of the speech act itself. So if it is public speaking, ceremonial speaking, that's going to require higher levels of metaphor, higher expected levels of complex grammar. If you're telling a story, then sometimes the sequencing, and there's a number of other things that really get challenging. But this is why the study of literature is different than the study of day-to-day dialogues. And so there is a video series called Wuchi Yuqadutlat, We're Talking Conversation, which was done by Jacques Alice Taff. And the goal there was just to have more conversational Tlingit. The video series Hashagun is a series of interviews, and you'll see things in there as well. So the big thing is to surround yourself with it. If you have access to some funding and some organizational sort of power, perhaps, you might look at a piece of software called Isotope RX, which allows you to clean up old audio with essentially the push of one button. And so you can get rid of a lot of crackle, hiss, buzz, background noise that might be in a particular recording. And if you have an opportunity to record someone speaking Tlingit, just always keep in mind that you want to minimize the amount of background noise. We do have some recordings that are potentially unusable because the television was on and it was very close to the recorder, and maybe the speaker was in a pretty physically weak state and had a hard time talking. So keep these things in mind. There's a lot of learners who said they would go to sleep with Tlingit on. They would just walk around with Tlingit on and just listening to it through their headphones. So consider that, and also consider how these recordings can be used. Sometimes you can take these recordings and you can have the text in front of you say going back to the Tarqa story or Duktut. And then you can listen to a very short section of it, read along with it, pause that, and then repeat it exactly as the speaker did. And this will all help with your tone, with your pacing, with your timing, with keeping things of Lingít Yuchatungi located in Lingít Tundatani. So these are things that you can do to continue as a learner. Again, there's resources out there. Check out clinkitlanguage.com. Check out Sealaska Heritage, their website, Goldbelt Heritage Foundation, their website, and just continue to go. And if you have resources and you want to share, let's talk about how to make them accessible to people. Yeah, gonna teach. Yeah, haslish go hasas to khait khaya. Khayqa wuchin. Lingít to gachtul tu. Yeah, achtuati qisakhan qatilla anti wuchin yejitune. Ya hayu qatangi dad. Had the chankian has to ya ak. A dad. Haya gursatak. Yeah, gonna teach.